Hello, everyone. I believe that most of you have already done something on forms or form validations. And if you have tried to achieve top-level user experience, I believe that you will agree with me that it's really hard. I work in Vacuum Labs as a software developer. I work on single-page applications, which means a lot of client-side code, a lot of React. And recently, we realized with my colleagues that we can use React to do validations very nicely. We can achieve great user experience, and it doesn't cost us tons of code. I'd like to share these findings with you in this talk. First, I'll start with an example that I borrowed from Bacon.js. If you don't know, that's a reactive functional streaming library for JavaScript. And they have a tutorial on how to make nice forms. So they start with a very simple form that has 2 fields and a register button. Now, what do we mean by great user experience? First, we would like to display the validity as soon as possible. However, not while the user is still typing, because that's irritating. And only after the field was touched already, because it's kind of unfair. I opened the form and there are already some errors. I didn't have a chance to do something about it. So that's it. Next, we want to handle async validations properly. This means that if I send a request to a server to validate something and the response isn't back yet, I want to show that the validation is in progress. And we want the register button to reflect the validity of the form. So when the guys from Bacon.js tutorial took a requirement similar to this and analyzed the form states and the events that may happen when user interacts with the form, they ended up with the diagram that is here, which, in my opinion, is quite complicated and big for a simple form like that. Now, if you imagine that in real life you are supposed to do much bigger forms that are more complex, then if you would like to achieve top user experience, as I was talking about before, you would end up feeling like this, I suppose. Now, what is usually done is compromising on the user experience. The forms are not so fancy and they don't respond so well to what you are doing. But with React, this can be differently. We can achieve great user experience, and the code can be still nice, simple, and functional. We wrote a validation library that does this, that helps you do validation nicely. It's on GitHub, it's here. There is still some polishing going on, but it's pretty much ready. We are already using it in our projects. You are free to use it, it's open source. And now I would like to show you the library, how it works, and what you can get by using it. First, let's look at the requirements. Once again, there are some more. So as I said before, we would like to display the validation result as soon as possible, but not while user is typing and only after the field was touched. And this means we would like to start the validation right away. Even if we don't want to display it right away, we would like to have it prepared so it's there when we need it. Then we would like to handle async validations. When they are in progress, we would like to indicate it. Then we'd like submit button or other UI elements to reflect the validity of the form. And lastly, we'd like to validate multiple related fields. This is often not easy to achieve with form validation libraries. Also, we'd like to, of course, we'd like to avoid common bugs such as race conditions when you type quickly and you send many requests to server and the validation responses come in different order, you might end up with the wrong validation result. So this is something we also want to handle. Now let's look at the code. This is how the validation is used. This is a piece of a render method. Here, if you want the validation to happen, you need to include a validation component within the render method of your form, such as this one. This is a validation for username. And this validation contains a set of rules. This is one of the rules. We have a value that we are validating, and we want this value to have a length of at least 6 characters. And this value is got here from the state. Apart from the rules, the validation component also contains a handler, which you are supposed to provide. And this handler is called whenever the validation library has something to tell you. For example, you see here, it can give you a validation result, and it can tell you to show or hide the validation. This handler will typically look something like, take the validation result and save it to the state of the component, or dispatch it and save it to your app state, or something like this. But we are flexible on this. You can use it as you like in your application. Now, last thing, maybe you are interested in one thing, how we are really validating the username input, because the validation doesn't really contain any input. They are linked via the component state. When I type into the input, the onChange method saves the input value to the state here, and then the validation component extracts the value from the state and validates it. So they are linked via component state. Let us now look at an example. I made a simple form here, email, password, and repeat password. So let us type in something. Invalid. Well, what did I expect, right? Still invalid. OK. Now let us enter some password. Too short. I was lazy. Now it should contain at least 1 digit. OK. And it's valid. Now I repeat the password. It doesn't match, so now it's good. Now the form is valid. Note that the register button was enabled only after all the fields were valid. If I delete a piece of this, then it's disabled. If I add it back, it's enabled again. OK. Now I'll reload it to get it fresh again. And so you can see how it works behind the scenes. I made the validation for this email input special, the validation handler. Whenever it is called, it logs the arguments with which it was called here. We can see that it has been already called once, and we have been told that the input isn't valid, the value there isn't valid, because the field is required. However, we do not show the validation because it was not touched yet. The user didn't change the field so far. Let us start typing. OK. Now I entered 2 letters. It goes bottom to top. This was the second argument. So I got empty validation result, which means that we don't know yet whether it's valid or not. And I was told to hide the validation because the user is typing. Then I got this message, it's not a valid email because the validation finished. Again, I typed the second letter here. I got show validation to be false again because I was typing. Again, invalid email. And lastly, after I stopped typing, I was told to show the validation. Now, so that you can observe this more closely, I can slow down the time a little bit. This is the typing pace. This says how long I have to stop typing for so that the validation will appear. I can change it, for example, to 10 seconds. Now, the validation will appear only after I stop typing for 10 seconds. Also, I have this second option here, which says I have an async validation on this email, and this is the duration of the async validation. So we can set it to 12 seconds. Now, I start typing. And the validation isn't here, because I am still kind of typing for the next 10 seconds, but in fact it is in progress, and it's going to be performed. And now, after 2 seconds, it was here. So even if it takes 12 seconds, it was started right after I stopped typing, and then it was ready as fast as it could be. Okay. Now, let us go back here. If you're interested, the email validations were like this here. First, it was checked whether it's empty or not, then whether it's an email, and lastly, when these two sync validations were completed, there was this long validation. It's a mocked validation that takes the time provided. Note that if you order the rules like here, it will be efficient, because when you put the sync validations in the front, the async validations won't be even called, so you can save server resources this way. Now I would like to sum up the key features that this validation library has. First, you are completely in charge of how the error is displayed, when it is displayed, where is it displayed, and so on. What it means, for example here, this handler, this is the function that is called by the validation library. It only gives you data. It only gives you the validation result and whether to show the validation or not, but it isn't opinionated on how you show it. I can do it as I want. Here, I use a class name that reflects the input validity, and also I'm showing a message here. Note that the error message can be translated or modified, or you can add something to it. It's up to you. We are very flexible on this. Also, even though the validation library sends you this show validation field value, you can override it, or you can use it and add something to it. For example, here we force show validation on blur. That's an additional feature. I can show it in the example. Let us now set this to 5 seconds. That means the validation will appear after 5 seconds if I stop typing. And let's say this is 0. It's fast now. Now I'll type something. And I have to wait for 5 seconds because I stopped typing. And if I do something like this, I change focus, I get the validation message instantly because of this here. Now, if, say, this will be 10 seconds, then I start typing. I change the focus. The validation is still in progress. It takes 10 seconds. So now we have to show that it's still in progress, but it appeared right after I changed the focus. And it's valid. OK. The second important feature is that the validation isn't coupled with the DOM. The validation component is here. The input is here. They are linked only via this state. They are not linked directly. And this is perfect because it doesn't have to be a simple input like this. It can be React Bootstrap input or any other input or any other user component, anything you want. You just need to make sure that you save the value to the state. Therefore, it's flexible on what UI components you use. A nice implication of this is that we got multiple fields validations. You just need to write a rule that takes 2 values, like here, or more values, as you like. Now, you might wonder, how do you write a rule such as this one? It looks to be a component, but it's not. In fact, it is a simple function. And for example, for the R same case, it looks like this. It just compares the value 1 and value 2 and returns true or false. If you want an async validation, the rule looks very similar to this one. You just need to return a promise with this as the value it will resolve to. And since these are functions, you can reuse them on your server as well. Okay, that's it. It's great. Thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the questions.
Let's look at the question part. Oli?
Okay.
Change it for the questions. Fantastic. Okay, so let's do it the old school way. Like, remember this from school. Okay, 1, 2, fantastic. There's a microphone somewhere. Mi scusi. Here we go. Cool.
So, hi, thanks. You had this example with the validation checking if 2 fields are the same. And I'm wondering where this validation should go, to both of the components or just one of them, or wherever?
So, as I said, it is not coupled with this input. It is separate. So you just need to put it anywhere in the render method. And then the handler of that validation should set the result somewhere to your state. That's, again, up to you where you save it. And then you can display it where you want. You can display it next to both fields, or next to one field, or on some completely other place within the application. The validation is independent from the inputs. So.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, next question. There.
So I think a few people have had a go at form validation libraries for use with React. So have you had a chance to have a look at any of the others, and can you give us a picture of what the landscape looks like? So I think that my question here is quite similar to the second one up there.
There are questions. The second one, the forms. Okay.
Just generally, what do other form revalidation libraries for React look like, or what does the general story for form validation look like?
Yeah, we have researched, before we have started working on this, we have researched other validation libraries in React, and before it even not in React, and each time we started investigating it more deeply, we weren't satisfied in the end. And we realized that it is quite simple to write such a library, because we are reusing many features. We are using streams from RxJS. We are using React for this. We are using validator.js to actually implement the rules. And the core of the library has 150 lines, I guess. So it wasn't that much work. And it gives us what we want. And I don't personally know Form C, maybe one of my colleagues does. I haven't personally investigated most of these libraries.
Okay, we can go for questions from the with the mics. Okay, we can go for the questions from the Slido slide. So let's do the first one.
The first one is, when do we write our data to the store? Well, we have this handler here, and you can dispatch the value here, and it will get to your app state in that way. That's it. You are free to do what you want with the validation data, so you can dispatch it. And whether you should put there invalid values or no, that's again up to you. We are, you can do it both ways as you like.
So let's do 2 more questions.
What are the advantages of using React syntax for validation? Well, this validate here, that is a React component. That's because we are using component will mount and unmount lifecycle methods for creating and destroying the streams. And that's why we need to include at least some of this within the render method, or it's pleasant this way, to use it this way. And since it is here, also the rules, it makes sense to put them here with the React syntax. But it's up to you. You could write them as functions if you want.
So which one do you want to choose? They're all number 5.
Okay, I'll answer first the last one. Multiple fields at once. Yes, that's exactly as I showed you here. You can write a validation. For example, end date is after the beginning date. You will provide end date, beginning date, and then the function, the body of the function will check whether this is true and return the result, like here. And then you need to include this snippet of code.
Could you change the slides, please? Hello?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's much better. Okay, cool.
Okay, so you need to, you just put one value here, the start date, the end date here, and the function will be something, as I said, the dates are in correct order, and you'll write the body of the function. And this snippet of code needs to go somewhere in the render method. And then you put some, when you can display the validation in a way you like, because inserting the validation piece of code here will make you, it will cause that you will be notified when there is some validation result. So you can then take the result and display it as you like.
Cool. Great. Thank you so much. That was Marcela Herta. Thank you.